Welcome back to the Jewish Futurism Lab, where we unpack Torah, tech, and tomorrow. I'm your host, Mike Wirth, Jewish futurist, community artist, and design educator, coming to you from Crown Town, Charlotte, North Carolina. This week, I'm sitting down with writer and creative director Eitan Chitayat, the creator of I'm That Jew, to talk about a new project he's launched with former Knesset member Dr. Eitan Wilf. Together, they're rolling out a futuristic idea of Zionism Is, a bold typographic and storytelling campaign that empowers Jews to reclaim the word Zionism. Let's get into it, y'all. All right, friends, welcome back to the lab. Today, we are diving into one of the most loaded words in Jewish life right now, and that's Zionism, capital Z, Zionism. It is a word that sits at the intersection of hope, history, trauma, and Twitter/X level hot takes on the subject. There is a real serious criticism of political Zionism and of Israeli policy, which I agree, right? That's absolutely something that should be, as for any country. There is also a modern form of Jewish hatred that uses Zionist, quote unquote, as a slur and tries to erase the very idea of Jewish peoplehood in our homeland. Somewhere in the crossfire, a simpler meaning gets lost, what we might call lowercase z Zionism, which is the basic connection of an exiled indigenous people to their homeland. My guest today is Eitan Chitayat, an internationally recognized writer, creative director, and brand builder based in Tel Aviv. He runs the Nady branding agency and has worked with global clients, just some small ones like Google, Apple, Facebook, YouTube, and Volkswagen. And many of you will know his viral Jewish pride project, I'm That Jew. In this episode, we talk about his latest collaboration with former Knesset member and Zionist thinker, Dr. Eitan Wilf, a campaign called Zionism Is. And what's brilliant about this is that visually, and I'll put this in the graphics, you'll see it on Eitan's shirt, is that the IS in Zionism is what the is part is. Really cool. But here's the really great part. Instead of arguing or declaring that there is one rigid definition or saying this is the definition, right? Zionism Is tries to open the word up for Jews through short text and bold typography. Eitan and Einat describe Zionism as home, culture, heritage, confidence, strength, feminism, equality, survival, and more. It's as diverse as the Jewish people, the meaning. Their goal is to reclaim the word for the Jewish people, to give Jews and Jewish allies a simple way to talk about their own Zionism, to start better conversations, and maybe create a unifying call in a moment when we feel very fractured. So we're going to look at this on two levels. On one level, we'll wrestle with the content, what capital Z Zionism means, why it's under attack, and how it connects to decolonization and indigenous return. On another level, we'll look at the craft, how a writer and a political thinker design a campaign around a single contested word, and what that can teach Jewish creatives about narrative power. Think of this as machloket l'shem shamayim, an argument and exploration for the sake of learning. All right, friends, let's get into it. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Eitan Chitayat.
Well, it's good to be here, and you know what? I think more of worlds coming together is a good thing. Like where we can eliminate the siloing a little bit. I think that's a good thing. But yeah, I mean, even the shirt that I'm wearing that you can see. I think your viewers are hearing it on audio, and you can talk about the shirt and what you see, but it's words that have a design solution. So I think in design. And I think in words. It's kind of like a back and forth all the time. I don't just think words.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. There's an inherent syntax between typography and writing that I think once the magic is connected, it's like we've seen concrete poetry before, and even
Oh yeah.
Levantine calligraphy that forms images. These it's certainly an expressive medium. Um, can we back up a little bit and go back to little Eitan, who was just sort of thinking about, like, when I grow up, I want to be a creative writer, right, and be
Mhm.
in this space, and yeah, I'm also proud of being Jewish, right, and like, how did all that come together in the Matrix?
Uh, yeah, sure. I mean, listen, as a kid, I was always very creative, I guess. I think all kids are creative, but in the sense that I was always drawing, always sketching and doodling. There are pictures of me as a kid, which it's really funny. I see myself in the corner on the table just writing and just sketching things out. And my parents would always say that I'd like to be kind of like left alone and in the corner creating. And what's interesting is I have two kids, and my younger kid, I see a similarity there. It's amazing how DNA works, but like exactly the same expression through getting things out of my head and putting them to paper. So as a child, as a kid, I was just always doing that. And as I got a little older, going through high school and then college, um, your parents, bless them, they try and make sure that they're setting you up for success. So my father was trying to push me into economics and math and physics, and I would bomb at those subjects. It just I wasn't good at it, and yet he'd still keep pushing and pushing and pushing. Um, as opposed to kind of seeing where I was really, I think, talented and pushing me there. So, but at the age of 27, I kind of finished my master's degree in Boston in marketing. And, as all my friends were going out and getting high paying jobs in marketing, I just sat in a computer lab and I put together a portfolio of creative, having taken one course in advertising called Copy and Layout, which is basically, for people who don't know, it's just like putting together words and imagery and how they work together in advertising. And then I went out and I got a job. I landed a job um, on the Volkswagen account at Arnold Worldwide, which was, I think, the top account in the world at the time. There were 10 writers and I was one of them. But all along the way, in tandem with with that, my parents are Israeli. My father was Iraqi. I mean, he passed away in September. My mother, Bulgarian, both Israeli, both came to Israel. And when I was a kid, we moved to Hong Kong and then London. And so I grew up in an Israeli household abroad, very proud of my heritage of being a Jew and all the values and traditions that come with it, and being an Israeli. Um, And so I've always felt as someone who grew up abroad, who is an Israeli, but a very international Israeli, um, the, the desire to represent, the desire to be quote unquote brand ambassador, because that's my identity. So to try always to put my right foot first, and to represent well. So the Jewish thing is, the way I see it, is literally who I am. It's my foundation, and I never felt that I wanted to hide it. And there were many moments in my life as a young kid where I did face anti-Semitism, whether it was Nazi jokes or Hitler jokes or oven jokes or Israel mockings, whatever it was. Um, and I just felt that it was always very unfair, and I didn't understand it. And so the Jewish, what is now Jewish advocacy, the Jewish identity, the pride of knowing the truth of my identity and my values and the way that my parents raised me in the country that I live in now, Israel. Um, it it's really a part of who I am, and I always express it in my personal life. Um, And so as my creative abilities evolved and my voice evolved publicly, I just put the two together because I'm not going to hide my identity if my identity is, I feel, something that is something to be proud of and it is misunderstood. So I find it um, important to express, through creativity, what I feel. And being Jewish and being Israeli, especially in a world where that's misunderstood and sometimes not misunderstood, but just lied about, it's something that I feel very strongly about. So for the past 20 years or so, with the advent of social media and digital platforms, I willingly pushed myself into those areas to try and inspire other people like me to not only be proud, but to be proud openly and to be creative and to use expression as a tool to fight lies. So that's how it started coming together. So there's the professional work that I do, and there's always been the passion. It just so happened that it's grown to the point where, like, I'm That Jew, as you mentioned, the film has been seen 15 million times, but the overarching work of I'm That Jew has been seen at this stage almost 400 million times on different platforms. And that's just like little old me, organic, putting it out there and trying to represent.
Voila, that's amazing. That's
Mm.
huge. I did the 40 million. I didn't have any sense of. I
400,
mean,
yeah, 400
400.
million almost. Yeah.
See, look at that.
It is amazing. It's kind of crazy, but that's all the work, all the banners that you've seen, the posters, the captions, the sentence expressions and the essay expressions on Substack, every single thing. It just adds up, and it's all out there now. And it's now funny because whereas before it was 99% working professionally on professional things and 1% passion on Jewish and Israel advocacy, as of October 7th, as you can imagine, I put all of my energy into the advocacy because I think it's existential. It doesn't mean I'm not doing the professional stuff. I'm
Mm,
trying to get back to that because I've taken a hit.
mm.
But yeah, I've dedicated myself to trying to uplift, inspire, and speak truth to power with Jewish identity. So yeah, it's gotten quite a lot of traction.
And you know, uh, I'm That Jew has been running since 2015, right?
Yeah, I think I wrote it as an essay in 2014,
Mm,
and I actually turned it into a piece, into a short film, and released that, yeah, around a year later.
that's amazing. Well, immediately the words "I'm that Jew." Uh, if you're aware of pop culture references and things, right? It's "I'm that bee," which would
Mm,
be the original phrase, which
mm,
I love because immediately it set up a posture, right? A
mhm,
Jewish posture that you don't often see, right? One that's confident, not aggressive, but
mm,
confident. And it's
mhm.
like, come at me, bro. Like as a, we're to attach some stuff to it. And even
Yeah,
the shirt you're wearing now, we mentioned earlier, we talk about it a little bit, right? It says Zionism home, just as words, but it's all caps, but the I and the S in Zionism is lowercase. So really it reads Zionism is home, which is such a
yeah.
brilliant, brilliant way to capture it.
Thank you. Well, I'd love to talk about that, but if I can answer the I'm That Jew,
Yeah.
I'm That Jew is and this, being in the communications kind of like world, it's statement driven. It's not a question. I'm That Jew is what I'm saying. I get to say it. I get to define myself. And I'm That Jew is not Eitan Chitayat. I'm That Jew is anyone who is Jewish who wants to own I'm That Jew and express what kind of Jew they are. And what kind of Jew they are is not one particular thing. It's around a million things on any given day. Um, and the idea behind I'm That Jew was to literally arm Jewish people with, again, it's not about being a proud Jew. It's about being openly proud, which is all the difference. And to be able to express it and to own it and make it yours, so long that you are adhering to what I believe our Jewish values celebrate, which is hopefully, the goodness in life, the light in life. So, so I'm that Jew is something that I wanted Jewish people to own, and it was never written about me. I wrote it actually for a friend, um, and then it went viral. But yeah, what you just mentioned about my shirt. So yeah, Zionism is all uppercase except for the IS. So when you look at it, it reads as just one word, Zionism, but it looks like Zionism is. And what I've been working on for the past year, as people, I mean, I know the podcast is before we launch, but maybe, the podcast is already out as the piece is launched. Zionism is a narrative that I developed working with Dr. Einat Wilf, who has become a colleague and a friend in the good fight, to try and take back the word Zionism for the Jewish people and by the Jewish people, very much like what I'm that Jew is for being Jewish. Zionism is for people who believe in Zionism and understand what it means. So Zionism is home. Zionism is culture. Zionism is heritage. Zionism is confidence. Zionism is strength. Zionism is feminism. Zionism is equality. Zionism is survival. Zionism is so many things. And I feel that the genesis of the idea was literally coming up with this Zionism is typographic treatment. And once that was in my head, I just couldn't let it go. It was just like, okay, it's spelling out as a statement from the Jewish people and Israelis and allies who might not know how to express Zionism. It makes it very, very simple. And from then I went to Einat. I sat with her, and who better than Einat Wilf? She's just like an incredible Jewish thought leader and represents Zionism so well. And when she agreed to do this with me, we sat down, we made an animation, which explains in 5 minutes what Zionism is to the Jewish people. And of course, that's not easy, Mike, because there's so many different interpretations of Zionism. There's the Orthodox approach, the religious approach, there's the secular approach. So the idea was to create something that was broad enough that everyone can embrace, and to put it out there and to own it as a statement. The Jewish people say Zionism is. And hopefully for people to get behind that and to express with confidence in a world where it's very scary to say that you're a Zionist, or very scary to tell people what Zionism actually is because of the mob that's going to attack you with all of their lies, to galvanize the Jewish people very similarly to what I'm That Jew did back in the day and continues to do, to say Zionism is this openly. And right now, people will see it as a film, but actually it's got legs. It can be, Zionism is Feminism can be a 3-part documentary series. Zionism is, I don't know, anything you want, really. You can talk about it. So it's a conversation starter to enable Jewish people to have more confidence to talk about it. If you have a friend who is talking to you about Zionism and all these terrible things that they've heard, well, let me just show you this piece and we can then talk, because I think that today there are so many different people in the Jewish world doing so much important work. But what we need to try and start doing is start bringing it together to a more unified narrative. In addition to having everyone, of course, having their own narrative, but to come together en masse as a brand and to try and start pushing that like our enemies have. So yeah, Zionism is the project that we're doing right now, and hopefully people are seeing it and sharing it.
Well, I love what you just said. I mean, gosh, you're solving such a huge problem. Is that like whenever I have to explain Zionism, I'm like, wait, what's my audience here? And I'm navigating through the 3 definitions or more and my own thoughts and everything. So excited that you're working with Einat Wilf. She came to Charlotte and spoke to our federation and blew us all away.
She's
Um,
amazing.
she
She's
really
amazing.
is. And I'm somebody as an artist in the United States coming from progressive spaces where I've been less welcomed. It was awesome to hear, excuse me, to hear Enot's story in that like she was essentially Israeli left,
Yeah.
for decades and stuck with the leadership in bad decisions through the 90s and 2000s, and just to see how things have evolved. And you know I was mentioning earlier, I felt the empowerment from I'm That Jew before October 7th, and then when October 7th happened, it was like, oh wow, okay, this is I get it now. This is 1,000% important. And you know,
Thank you.
yes, you're welcome, and please, you're not off the hook. Keep working on it. Uh, and I love uh, the fact that like you have the honorary Jews in I'm That
Yes.
Jew,
Yeah,
and
of course. You don't have to be Jewish to be I'm that Jew. I mean, honestly, it's if you subscribe to our values, which I think most of the Western modern world does without even knowing it, then you're that Jew too. I mean, you don't have to be a woman to wear a Me Too shirt. You don't have to be gay to celebrate Pride, and you don't have to be. I'm not down with the Black Lives Matter political organization, but when the movement came out, of course, I'm supporting the fact that Black lives do matter. So it, it you don't have to be black to wear a Black Lives Matter T-shirt or to celebrate Black rights. And it's the same thing with being Jewish. I mean, I'd love to see. And by the way, it does happen that people go to, Street Poppy Lane is a place where I sell the merchandise, but that we have people who ask me, I'm not Jewish, can I wear an I'm That Jew shirt? And I'm like, my God, yes, you can, please. And people buy it. And there are also honorary t-shirts too. So including our allies to me is just it's a beautiful thing. So there are honorary Jews as well.
and I think that's fabulous because something that I and others are trying to do, just like you, is engaging with Palestinians, engaging with Arab neighbors, right? Like talking about the future and getting past the tar that keeps us all stuck, right? So when I'm seeing, in the banners and the ads, like the Green Prince, right, Mossab Youssef, for example, or
Yeah.
Bassem Eid, or
Hmm.
Yosef Haddad, right, Dalia
Hmm.
Ziada.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm like, wow, like these are voices that, people who are incredibly brave, who,
Hmm.
speak out for the fear of death. And, talk about that. What's your message to folks about how do we engage with Palestinians, with Arab neighbors, right? They're our cousins. So, with the Zionism is home, and I'm That Jew. What's kind of the language you've been using?
I think, the way that I approach things is to try and speak with. Look, I'm not an expert. I'm not an academic expert on Middle Eastern issues or on interfaith issues. I'm an ordinary man who has a wonderful wife, two kids, and a puppy, and I live in Tel Aviv, and I'm Jewish, and I've always had non-Jewish friends, and I've worked with the Palestinians before, Israeli Arabs. I have gone to the EU as a part of a peace delegation. I've worked with Leonard Cohen to try and bridge the gap between Palestinians and Israelis. I've mentored Palestinians as a part of a program. Um, I think what I try and do is I just try and keep it honest. At the end of the day, I try and lead with my humanity and not lead with hate or rumors or convenience to be accepted within my own tribe. When we do something wrong, I say that too. Lately, less in the last 2.5 years because we're literally fighting for our lives. But I'd like to get back to it because I don't think that we're perfect. So I try and just speak the truth, and speak as a human being with no agenda other than um, to be who I am and to share my experiences. And I think that when you lead with your humanity, as opposed to trying to be accepted, um, then you can have more honest conversations and you can demand honesty. And I think that that's very important too, to demand honesty as well from the people who might not agree with you and to say, why? Where does that come from? So I think that in terms of bridging the gaps between Israelis and Palestinians and Jews and Muslims right now, it's a very difficult time right now to be talking about that because we are literally still at war. I mean, we are, it's so funny that with this week of everything that has been happening with geopolitics and Trump and Netanyahu and what the hell is going on, I can't control that stuff. What I can control is what I feel and what I'm doing. Um, so I think that it's just a really challenging time right now because we're in survival mode. But I'd like to think that as we come out of this and things begin to stabilize or become more quote unquote normal again, that our enemies, which include people who have been lied to and who don't really know what they're talking about because they've been lied to, um, we'll get a little distance from that. And maybe we'll learn a lesson or two. And the same thing on our side. And maybe in time we can start bridging those gaps. But it's going to be very, very hard. People are very much in their own corner right now, including myself. And it's hard. It's hard to think about that right now. When a week ago, literally, and this is what I was saying about the whole Trump thing and the geopolitics, is like we had another bout and I was running from ballistic missiles with my family a week ago. So it's hard to think peace right this second and tolerance and coexistence. But we have to get to it. We have no other choice, you know. So it's a tricky question, right now between the Palestinians and the Israelis. Things are still in upheaval. Things are still being shaken every day.
Indeed, indeed. No, that is. I'm realizing what I'm asking you, so I appreciate that candor. Um,
Yeah, sure.
let's shift a little bit to kind of talk about global Jewry,
Hmm.
so to speak. So, once this fog of war transitions, right, and we're into another relative peacetime, I mean, it's not lost on the world here that, uh, you know, the population center of Jewish people is now very much centered in Israel, and therefore shifting Jewish culture towards Israel, right? At least in the West, we're seeing this. Um, and you know, I'm just curious, like, uh, as things kind of center there a little bit more, many more younger diaspora Jews are like really thinking about their relationship to Israel, whether they have a connection or not. So, do you see that? Am I observing something that's ghostly, or do you see that it's true that there is influence that's gaining strength from Israel, specifically Tel Aviv, especially as a cultural hub? Um,
Yeah, I think that people are, a lot of people are considering Israel for the first time in their lives because they see um, what's going on in their own communities, whether it's in Europe or the States or in South Africa or in Australia. A lot of people are seeing, and I'm not saying it is the writing on the wall, but they're seeing writing on the wall in their eyes, and they feel like they don't belong because you can you can be Jewish in another country, and you can love your homeland of Israel and where your heritage comes from, but they can't talk about it because they're going to be ostracized from society. But other people from other countries who reside in in any particular country, they're not demonized like Jewish people are with Israel. and it affects their business. It affects their relationships, their friendships. Um, so I think it really is happening. Um, at the same time, there is a problem in Israel, and we have our own extremism here. We have um, some right wing nuts. Really, we do. I mean, I don't typically talk politics, but I think this transcends politics right now. I mean, we do have some very, very extreme right wing members in our government. We have a member in our government who was an instigator um, for the assassination of Rabin. Um, he's in our government right now. We have people who are creating awful, just really just shockingly awful acts of violence against Arabs in Israel. It's a minority. It's not a lot of people, but of course, those people get a lot of attention by the international press, by the media. And then Jewish people see that. And they are, Jewish people abroad in America, in all the countries that I mentioned, see that. And they're like, well, that's not the Israel that I want. That's not the Israel that I can defend. And they're right in my views. Because if there's a way of of being, there's a way of acting, of what type of standards of behavior you hold yourself to. And if you don't, what's the word I'm looking for? If you don't protect your values and say, you know what, you might be against this, but the way that you act is not through violence, is not through putting other people down. There's a way. So people abroad are seeing that this way of violence and putting other people down and humiliating them is being accepted and not much is being done about it, then that's very hard to defend abroad. And that turns people off from Israel. And again, it's a minority, but the perception is, because of the propaganda war against Israel and what sells in media, the perception is that it's the vast majority of Israelis are like that, which is simply not true. And it's very difficult for Jewish people abroad um, to stand 100% fully with Israel when that type of stuff is being shown. And so I would say that, yes, there are people who want to come here because of the ideals and the true Israel. And there are people who are kind of really turned off by that and want Israel to take a hard stance on not allowing that to happen. So I think it goes both ways. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people are looking at Israel as a place to be. I actually don't agree. I know that a lot of people have different opinions about this, but as a Jew who grew up in Hong Kong and London and Boston and New York, I don't think that all Jews need to live in Israel. I just don't. I don't think that that's necessary. I think people should come to Israel if they love Israel. I don't think they should come to Israel to escape, unless, of course, there's a real reason to, like what we saw in Europe before the Second World War, during the Second World War. Some people say we're already there. I mean, I don't know. I don't know that anyone knows that, but it's scary out there. So I came to Israel for love of Israel. I came to Israel to be closer to my parents who moved back here. I came back to Israel out of a true love for Zionism, because this is home. And I'd like to think that everyone else who wants to come back would come back for that reason. But if they need to come back for other reasons, of course, they should. It's challenging. Israel is not easy. Israel is not an easy place to live. It's got its hardships, but it is home. It is home.
Indeed, indeed. And you know, especially here in the States, um, the there this is the framework that gets often superimposed, is that if you're Jewish, you're often assumed or forced in many times to then feel like you have to defend Israel. Even if you, and that's the thing, is that like that awkward position, sometimes can hurt a Jewish person and make them
Or-
unmarry themselves from their connection to Israel even further, because, like you're saying, all that twisted logic all of a sudden makes sense. And what the perpetrator who goes to the Jewish person and says this is hoping for is that their Jewish education or their knowledge of Israel is low. And unfortunately, a lot of Jews don't have tremendous knowledge of Israel, especially the history or the formation of the state. And I think that's where a lot of Jews get kind of crumpled up and lose their strength, and we lose
yeah,
some unity in that space.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And it's not only not knowing the history of Israel, they don't really, of course, I'm not making generalizations. I'm saying that there are a lot of people who don't know much about their Jewish identity. They don't know anything about why Israel, why Jewish people, what is the connection between the Jewish people to Israel? Um, they don't know. They've never been taught. And I think that's got a lot to do with something that happens naturally, which is assimilation. We, the Jewish people, have assimilated. And I think assimilation is good and we should assimilate, but you don't want to assimilate to the point where you forget your identity and you forget your values and you forget why your mother, your grandfather, your great grandparents, and go back and back and back and what they were. A lot of people in America are Jewish and they know Starbucks and they know their lives in America and they know their job and they know their college education and they know that Jewish in Israel, and yeah, but there's some connection there. But they really don't know why Israel was established, when, what values is it based on, um, how did it come into being, what is our ancient history, that there has always been a presence here, that Zionism isn't about um, uh, uh,
Colonialism and, yeah, and
it's
apartheid
not
and all
about,
the.
yeah, it's not about expelling, it's not about not allowing people to have their faith, whether you're Muslim or Greek Orthodox or Christian. um, you can be an equal citizen here in Israel
Hmm.
and have that, because the Jewish values are about, it's about coexistence. You're not trying to change people, it's a be, in Islam, it's about conversion. And that's not a diss on Islam. It's just, it's Christians
Proselytization.
came into, yeah,
Right.
because that's not what being Jewish is. It's like, let us be,
Right.
and, live and let live. So, so they don't know that. And I think that that's the challenge, is how do we get Jewish people to remember who they are, why they are what they are, where do they come from, what is the history, um, and then to educate other people who are being actively targeted and lied to, so that the rumors and the demonization continues, because the people behind those lies, the people who are fueling strategic thought and money into these false narratives, they do have an agenda. They can't beat us on the battlefield, hopefully, but they can destroy us in the war of public opinion. And it's the people on the ground, not the politicians necessarily, not the Jewish organization leadership that has a lot of work to do in this regard of narrative. It's they can't be. It's the people on the ground that need to be armed with knowledge of who they are, and not succumb to the lies to the point where they can't speak their truth, because that is exactly what happened across our history, and most recently with the Holocaust, where you don't have a voice anymore. So we need to speak up. We need to get people to speak, but they need to be armed with things that allow them to and help them to. And that's my goal. And again, this is coming from someone who's not an expert in Middle Eastern affairs and Jewish affairs, but I do know how to communicate. And I think that we need to help Jewish people around the world come back to the essence of what being Jewish is, and to remind them that it's a beautiful thing, no matter what lies that they themselves are being infected with. It's so important. It's critical. It's To me, the number one priority of the Jewish people, besides physical defense, it's the narrative war. And I've been working at it for like 15 years. And let me tell you, Mike, it's not being taken seriously enough within our own community. Not yet.
No, I totally agree, and see this deficit in a huge way because, I hate that like when we have this conversation, things get boiled down to like terms that annoy people, like branding. Like we have to brand ourselves as a people, and it's like I don't want to be branded. All the
Yeah, of
the
course.
weird things,
Yeah.
and you know, I think to the Hasbara, right? It
Hmm.
has not really, in my opinion, has not really worked well, and I think honestly, it's done damage to Jewish
Hmm.
people because, especially a lot of American Jews, if you do birthright or if you, don't have that familial connection, like I have family in
Hmm.
Israel, so you can just call and hear, and you get that play by play. But if folks are consuming Israel passively that way, I think then like they lose. It doesn't gel with their Americanism, right? Like the Israel is messy and has problems, but so is America. And it's like, but in their mind, America's pure and this light, and Israel isn't. And I think like squaring that up becomes really hard. And again, is a vulnerability that I think our enemies take advantage of in that
Not only,
space.
yeah, not only take advantage of, but strategically, they're creating that strategically. That it's not happening by accident. It's a plan. And if you don't take their narrative strategic ploy seriously, its narrative, um, and you don't not respond to it. Remember, I'm that Jew and Zionism is statement. It's not a response. It's a statement. This is my statement to the world. If we don't start stating and amplifying what we are and what we need to do and who we are, as opposed to answering lies, then they're going to win. And so it's not an accident. So we really need to start making Jewish organizations, the Israeli government, coalition governments, everyone needs to understand that this battle is a narrative war. And if you don't take it seriously, lives are lost. Uh, if we could have made people understand shortly after October 7th what really happened and who we really are, then I don't, over the course of decades, then, okay, maybe October 7th, would have happened anyway. But the day after, I think people would have said, well, hold on, we know the Jewish people. We understand their values. We see their track record. They're not perfect, but something is not adding up. So we have to start doing that work now. And if we don't do that work now, more lives will be lost. If we wouldn't have had that pressure to stop doing what we were doing because the world was saying that we were the bad guys, well, what if the world was not all aligned on the fact that we are the bad guys after October 7th? Because we had invested in telling our story, our real story, and arming people with truth. We need to start doing that. I mean, there's just no, it just needs to start happening. And you're right about the word branding. It's not, I don't like that word when it comes to a people, but it's the only word I have to use for it right now. The Palestinians have a brand. They do. Israel has a brand. The Jewish people have a brand. We just need to make sure that our brand is true. And I'm a purist when it comes to branding, Mike. So to me, a brand uh, whether it's a company, an organization, a product, or a service, that there's a very small gap between what they do and who they are and how it's communicated. So the gap is small. That's a strong brand. And I think that the strongest brands in the world are true. So I think the Palestinians, and I've said this before, I think the Palestinians have an awful brand because I don't believe in the Palestinian um, propaganda. I see it for what it is, but they have exceptional marketing. And on the other hand, we have an exceptional brand that has stood the test of time with all of our values, everything that makes up the Jewish people, but we have lousy marketing. And we have lousy marketing because we don't invest in our marketing. So we have to put the truth out there. And the Jewish brand to me is a true brand. We just need to invest in it seriously.
I love that. I love that, that you've got to invest in the truth. That's
Yes.
really our approach. I mean, that's very liberating. I'm inspired to hear these things. Um,
Great.
I'm curious.
Hmm.
You know, you were once a newbie, right? Coming up in the design world, and you had mentors and in the creative world as well. Um,
Hmm.
you know, who gave you advice that shaped your career and got you to where you are now. You know, looking ahead now, uh, you're in that position to help a newbie. Do you have any like advice from your heroes that you'd love to pass down to the next generation, or is there anything that's within you? I know you've said a lot of brilliant things today, but something in you that you think the next generation of creatives should really know and focus on?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things. I mean, one of the things that I've been saying lately, and that I really believe in terms of just communications, is what you have to say is important. You know, it's so important though how you say it. And I think that in this world of this digital world that we're living in, and now with AI and social media and all that crap, we're losing our humanity, and the humanity is just as much about how you communicate as it is what it is that you're communicating. So you can deliver information, a point of view, a piece of creative work that is exceptional in terms of what it is trying to say, but how you say it, the humanity behind it, to me, to connect with an audience is really important. And I think that because everything has become so divisive in the world, and so much is fueled by anger, so much is fueled by a hate or intolerance. Algorithms reward you for that. We all know that at this stage. It's the divisive things, the anger, the hatred, the venom that makes it out there. Um, I would say, don't fall for that. I would say what you want to say, but use empathy. Connect with people, build bridges, even if you're going at it with someone. Um, be very careful about how this message will land. How will it make someone feel? Um, and that's the thing that makes me sad in the world. And I think a lot of people, especially older people, who have, you know, you know, lived a little bit and remember how it used to be. All this noise and this negative noise is not something to emulate. I would say be more, heart, more human, try and connect more, um, as opposed to taking the easy route, which is divide more in this world. And I'm not saying that like as a kumbaya statement. I know we have our issues, but if you have people like as Shai Davidai, who is a very dear friend of mine, he's a fierce warrior. He is. And he's just as much a fierce warrior as anyone who is a fierce Jewish advocate, let's just say, on the right. but he tries to build bridges. He tries not to, he tries to maintain his own value system and fight the good fight with those things as his foundation, as opposed to stooping. And I think that I'm seeing too much of that with the young generation, that they think that this is how things should be. So my advice would be to really pay attention to how you speak, and is it the best way? And there's a pressure to there's a pressure to not lead with that. There's a pressure to lead with anger, you know. And I think that we have to be very, very conscious of it, very aware of it, down to the individual. Because when so many individuals start doing that, and it builds and it builds and it builds and it builds, and suddenly you live in the world that we live in, which is a polarized world where people can't talk to each other because of how someone said something. So I can make a film which is trying to bring people together, and it could take me a year, as it took with Einat on Zionism Is, and someone could say, "Well, this is shit," you know, in a little comment, as opposed to, okay, well, I have an issue with this. Let me try and articulate that differently so that we can all benefit from it. So I think that when it's at scale, the division and the hatred and comments like that, we start losing as a race. And communicators and creatives have a responsibility to, I think, lead with with light and not with venom. So that's a very long way of saying, be careful with how you say things. If you're a creative, you have a responsibility. That's one of the things I've been talking about a lot, and it's not easy to do. I find myself sometimes like, oh, I got something to say, and I've done it too, of course. But as a principle, that's not my way, and I don't think it's the Jewish way.
No, no, I agree. And my professional practices in UX. So I always think through that lens. And just how your users and how your consumers are mentally dealing with your messages, right? Like through a process of engaging with you. And you know, uh, I am an academic, so I love thinking about all these things and connections to philosophy. And I don't know if you've heard of meta modernism yet in
I
your
haven't.
your travels. So I'm sure you've heard of modernism and postmodernism,
That,
of
yes.
course. So there's a new breed of thinking called meta-modernism, which essentially rejects the cynicism of postmodernism, and just accepts it as a reality that like things can go bad, but it goes back to modernism in terms of looking at utopian ideals and being visionary. So
Mhm.
we can say let's build the city of the future, but let's do it sustainably, right? Like that
Mhm.
would be a meta modern thought, right?
Mhm.
Um, so in this idea of communication and the Jewish brand outward to the world, um, what I love about I'm That Jew and Zionism is Home is that it sits in this place, like as you're talking about the algorithm, that almost kind of hacks the algorithm in that if vitriol and anger drive it, I feel like the language you have is not aggressive but direct
Yes.
and erudite, right? That'd be the best word for it. And I think uh, that to me feels like the best hack to the algorithm because there the you know our enemy's messaging is working. It is completely. It's like the on the rails of the algorithm, just coasting at
Mhm.
full speed. And I feel like sometimes, like you said, I struggle. Like I've put out work, post October 7th that is very aggressive and very pointed towards enemy statements. And I felt bad. I felt like, oh, do I want to have this around in 5 years? Or like that thing you say to somebody that you care about, and then like you're like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. But in the
Mhm.
moment, I felt it. Um, so I guess I'm wondering, like, uh, how do what's your thought on how am I right? Like, is your thinking as far as the verbiage and whatnot? Like, was that a thought that came through your mind? Like, ooh, this will do well in the algorithmic space. And then my follow up is just like, all right, once we get that opening, how do we then put in the the truth, right? If uh, um, the truth is our brand, right? How does that then sit? And I might be asking major questions here, but
No, it's. I mean, they are major questions, and it's very. It's not easy to figure it all out. But I think what I can do in my life is I can talk about who I am, and so I'm that Jew is about me just saying, well, this is who I am. This is who we are. We have Jews who are religious and secular and atheist and modern Orthodox. We have Jews that are black and white and brown and mocha and Middle Eastern and okay, we have, but I'm talking about me, and I know because this is me, and I'm still getting to know the Jewish community. So I, I'm saying that when you talk about yourself, like our enemies' narratives are really hyper focused on talking about the other, hyper focused on talking about us. I'm and I'm hyper focused on talking about me. I get to say who I am. I'm not going to tell a black man what black culture is. I'm not going to tell an Asian woman what her culture is. I'm not going to tell a gay person what they are. And I don't think that it's a good idea to let non-Jewish people determine what our narrative or our connection is to the land of Israel in the case of Zionism. So what I'm saying is we need to talk about us and we need to talk about our values, and then we need to show the world through who we are that there's very little gap, which is complicated because, of course, we're not perfect. But I think that if we're able to focus more on owning our narrative and speaking about what we uh, what we have in our DNA, what our parents taught us, what our festivals teach us, what our written and documented uh, personas are as a people, whether it's the religion, whether it's the culture, whether it's the ethnicity, all of those things. That's on us to do, um, which is not an easy thing to do. Then we have a better chance at responding all the time and defending all the time. It's about owning it and saying, well, that's not who I am. And to be able to say, I'm Jewish, I know who I am. I'm a Zionist, I know what Zionism is. You don't. And then you can not attack, but you can just say, would you ever tell someone in Norway what Norwegian culture is like? I think that we have to lead with more confidence. But in order to lead with more confidence, we need to get more educated, and we also have to realize that this is a very, very serious thing, which we cannot expect our children to do on their own. I mean, I think that as a whole, the Jewish, I don't know, people, adults in the room for the past 20, 30 years have unintentionally failed our youth because we kind of like let trying to put it in a way that's clear, we kind of let others define our story for us and saw it happening, as we were being demonized and just didn't do anything about it. You need to do something about it. And you need to lead with knowledge of who you are. I'm not sure if this answers your question because it's a very tough, subject. There's a lot of things that must be done. But the more people that can understand and openly own their identity, and have those conversations when they have their back straight, and their soul is aligned, then I think that we can start getting people who haven't been infected with this hate outside of our community on board. And I think that's the only way. And it's a marathon. It's going to take a long, long time, and that's only if we're able to take it seriously, as opposed to just whatever will be will be. We need to take it strategically. We need to take it seriously. But that's me waffling on a bit. It's a very difficult you know subject, because it's so complicated. But ultimately, be who you are, own who you are, know who you are, and we can talk about anything. We can have conversations, but if you're going to hate, it says more about you than it does about me. And to say that too, you know, you can talk about what your enemies are doing. You can talk about all the hate out there. You can mock people for the hate. I have done it many times, but that's not the overall strategy. The overall strategy is about you. It's about us. So let's talk about us.
Love that. And uh, I'm happy to hear you waffle on this because this is a huge question. Let me keep the metaphor. I'll put a little butter and syrup on your waffles. Just share some thoughts. Uh, you know, I work a lot with the Black and Jewish community. I even have ancestry in both worlds. I have Black relatives and Jewish relatives. So the I've had a time to think about a perspective. I'm not an expert on either, right, necessarily, but I have, as an academic, studied cultural history, especially of diasporaed peoples. So when I look at the African American community in the United States, and you know, just the things that they've achieved since their own liberation, uh, I feel like are incredible lessons for the Jewish people. And while there was an Afro Black consciousness in the 60s and 70s that resulted in a cultural explosion, um, I see parallels to the Jewish community today. And I really, I'm hoping and praying for this Jewish consciousness to just really raise across the globe. And I feel like, uh, you know, in the States, we've been very Ashkenazi and somewhat Sephardic driven in the Jewish story. So it's really inspiring to see, especially in Israel, as I asked you earlier about the cultural shift globally, is that arts and culture from the Mizrahi community are starting to grow in popularity and really
Yeah,
like
it's great.
gain
It's
of.
really important. Yeah, I agree. I think the Jewish community is getting to know the Jewish community finally, at long last. I mean, my father, Iraqi, my mother Bulgarian, so it's like Mizrahi Sfaradi. I think I've got a little Ashkenazi in me too, but a lot of people don't know, like they don't know Syrian Jews. They don't know Moroccan Jews. They don't know Yemenite Jews. They don't know Iranian Jews. It's a whole different thing. They don't know. We're
I'm
just
from Long
getting.
Island. Yeah, I'm
There
from
you
Long Island.
go.
That has the hugest Persian expat community, Great Neck, New York. So
More
uh,
than West Coast, more than LA.
maybe that's shifted. I'm talking about the 80s and 90s.
Oh, okay.
There's a major community, but you're right,
Yeah,
right? Connecting
I,
when knowing ourselves as a people.
Yeah, and I'm actually discovering, because the advocacy work has like spread, and I'm invited to visit communities around the world, and I didn't know anything about the Australian Jewish community. I didn't know anything about the Canadian Jewish community. I didn't know much about the South African Jewish community. And there are many communities that are around the world, that we're starting to, what the silver lining here is that you and I are talking, Mike. The silver lining is that you have people that are super conservative, speaking to left-wing liberals who are Jewish, and discovering each other and discovering what it is that we have in common, and also discovering what we don't have in common, which is fine. But but there's been kind of a rebirth And I'm actually very hopeful. I know that everyone's depressed and it is a difficult time, and we're all of that is true, and it's difficult. It's many times infuriatingly hard, here and abroad. Um, but but the silver lining is, we're suffering the same thing, and we're getting to know each other, and we're getting to, I think, feel the goodnesses in other people around us who are very, very different but still Jewish. We're discovering gaps within the Jewish community, with communities we didn't even know existed. So you can bridge the gap now. But it's really, what are we going to do with all of this? Um, how are we going to, not let this moment and this tragic 2.5 years that has been building and building and building, how are we going to turn lemons into lemonade as much as we can? And I think that we can do that by continuing to have conversations, continuing to realize that what separates us within the Jewish community is not as important as what brings us together. And here I am speaking to a guy called Mike, and I never would have, were it not for this awful tragedy that we're going through. So that's a, that's a, at least that's a win, and we need to continue it. You know, we on the most personal of levels have a lot to lose when we have kids coming home and are facing uh, literally Jew hatred in our own lives, or colleagues that we cannot speak to at the office about something that is very important to us. These are, or we can't say, uh, so where are you going on summer vacation? Oh, I'm going to, Cuba. Oh, I'm going to Cape Town. Oh, I'm going to Israel. Some people won't say it, so the Jewish people need to come together and speak together, and gain confidence together and support each other that way, because it does affect us in the most personal of ways on the ground. And if it hasn't affected you as a Jewish person yet, mark my words, it will. That's why we need to keep fighting and coming together. And that's actually something that gives me a lot of hope. I think that the youth of today, not the ones who are turning away from Zionism and turning away from their Jewish identity, because of lies that have been told and that are affecting them. But I think that for many, many Jews, they have found a community, and there's more unity. We just need to keep it going. We need to keep learning, and we need to keep connecting. And it takes a village, but we need a strong village right now. And I think narrative and speaking up will help do that on the ground, on literally grassroots, from the ground up, not top down, although that is, to me, critical as well, but really bottom up, like this, just like this. It's amazing to see, people as I travel, wearing Jewish jewelry or Jewish merchandise, or you can recognize that they're Jewish and they might recognize you. And all of a sudden there's this instant bond, which wasn't really happening that much before. That's a step in the right direction. Through community comes strength. And we need to do that more.
Amen. Amen. Yeah, you're right. I was wearing this T-shirt that I'm wearing now, that I designed because Spot doesn't have good tourism stuff.
It's great. It's a nice shirt.
Thanks. And an Israeli guy and his family came right up to me. I was standing in Tokyo, and he just walked right up to me, and he was just like, have you been there?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah." And we had a great conversation for a minute. So
Yeah,
no, I absolutely agree. And you know, I think, Eitan, people like you and others out there in the creative world, I think we're starting to, I would say you have already realized it, but many of us are starting to realize our leadership roles in this great change. And I really feel so strongly about futurism, not Italian futurism, but Jewish futurism,
Mhm.
and how other cultural futurisms, because of what the effect it's had on those cultures. Yeah, I mentioned Black culture in the 60s and the 70s, things like reggae, hip hop, soul, punk, right, are
Mhm.
things that became cultural scions, like just, but they were vehicles for protest, they were vehicles for expression. And I feel like the work that you're doing and others is starting to give us the foundation for that, so that like we could have our Bob Marleys,
Yeah.
and our globally known folks who, when we see them, we think of Jewish liberation, right? Um, and you know, I think what, for me at least, what I'm hearing you say, and tell me if I'm saying the right thing, is we need to collaborate more, right? Is that
Mhm.
like a conversation turns into shared understanding, into shared action, right? Into
Yep.
shared outcomes. So, um,
I
you
think
know,
I think that that's very important. I mean, on a micro level, if you're familiar with my work, so I would put out these "I'm that Jew" kind of like posters, and the posters are just saying things like, if you're, I'm that futurism Jew, that could be you, or I'm that graffiti T-shirt wearing Jew, or that artistic creative Jew. I mean, like you get to own it. Um, but the work to me, like it's not that I'm that Jew. It's that other people are, and so the idea is to help other people own their identity. So in terms
mm,
of collaboration, my whole agenda has been to collaborate on social media, to reach out to these people and say, will you work with me on this? For Zionism is what I would love more than anything is for Jewish organizations to approach me and Einat maybe and be like, how do we leverage this as opposed to continuing to work in your silo? Like, where is the G8 or G7 or whatever the fuck it's called of Jewish leadership?
I know,
Why are you
right?
not all standing on a stage, and why have you not yet? So that's not a criticism. Maybe it's polite criticism,
Well,
but
it's
I
an
say it not
observation.
to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're an observation.
it's not to demonize. I come with love. It's to say that's what the Jewish people need right now. We need more collaboration, more action together, less ego. I can tell you, working in the advocate space, which is I think the forefront of Jewish narrative right now, and the kind of the social media space, is you get to see how territorial people are, as opposed to and like what I'm trying to do, which is I try and read so much as it's possible. I try and read comments. I try and reach out to other Jewish advocates and work with them. Like
Mm,
this Zionism Is project is you have a creative professional who approached a Jewish thought leader, an exceptional academic, and we're collaborating. That needs to happen more. Like she's got her strength, I've got my strengths. Let's come together. Other people can do the same thing. And I think that as things evolve over the coming years, I'm really hoping that what you're saying is true, that people take more action together. Um, and, again, what divides us is not as powerful as what unites us. So let's unite and do things together. And nothing could be more true of the average Jewish person in their own lives collaborating with Jewish narratives and expressing them and pushing them forward because hopefully it represents them well. So collaboration and doing and stepping up uh, is so critical. And so if what I'm doing and other people like me are doing is inspiring regular people like myself, because I am a regular person, to do more, um, then great. That's what we need.
yeah, absolutely. I really, I've kind of in my head. thought of the work now, and maybe this is ego, but uh, just the calling of world events, I think, really sets us up as creatives, as a neo Mishkan generation, in that we all have our roles, right? We're all called to greatness. We have a divine design brief, so to speak, um, and we're waiting for our Betzalel, um, to take the reins. But Eitan, this has been such an amazing conversation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for having me, Mike. I appreciate it. Thank
Of
you.
of course, and before we say goodbye, is there? You've been talking about the Zionism is Home project. Uh,
Yeah.
Anything you want to set us up for, or
Yeah.
that
Well,
you're excited about, since this has already come out?
yeah. Well, first of all, I hope you can go to imthatjew.com. And in that website, in the work, you'll find the Zionism film on different platforms. Please share it. Don't just share it on one platform. Go to all the platforms, share it, make it yours. Talk about Zionism, have the courage to. One thing that I can tell you right now is if anyone wants to support, you can donate on the site so that I can continue with the work that I'm doing, because this is not something that is easy to do in terms of, I'm trying to, balance my work with my Jewish advocacy. So support helps, but but share, talk about it in your own lives, and hopefully um, you can be the brand ambassador for things that resonate with you. And even if you don't agree 100% with something, let's get back to a world where we can have conversations and not demonizations. So to the Jewish people listening and to people who are supporting the Jewish people, and to say, stay strong. There's a lot on the line for Western culture. And it's going to take people doing things and sharing things and having the courage to speak up against the mob, because there is a mob out there. That's going to make all the difference. But yeah, visit imthatjew.com. Look for Zionism Is, and share away and keep following the work, I hope. But thank you so much, Mike. I really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who's been listening.
Absolutely. Well, Eitan, this has been a pleasure. So thank you, my friend. We'll be in touch in the future.
Thank you, man. Take it easy. Ciao, ciao. Bye-bye.
Ciao. You have been listening to the Jewish Futurism Lab, a weekly independent production of Mike Wirth Art Incorporated. If you are into these conversations, make sure you follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and drop a rating and a review so more folks can find the show. And to go deeper, hit up MikeWirthArt.com, MikeWirthArt.com, for more episodes, merch, original art, and essays. That is MikeWirthArt.com. And come hang with me on Instagram. I'm at Mike Wirth, MikeWirth. And if you are, or know somebody who is a fascinating Jewish futurist who should be on this microphone with me here, slide into my DMs and tell me who I should talk to next. Until next time, friends, see you in the future.